Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. Today we're going to Munich to have the introduction of the Highland Park Odin. Follow me to Munich to this wonderful event.
You take a picture of me and the gods?
Of course.
And the gods,
Yes. Yes. I told you on the phone I'm Swedish, but
You have the perfect mix of everything.
yeah, I guess.
He's the perfect mix. He's the perfect Scandinavian mix, he said.
Yeah, just too small for us to bring it.
There you go.
Guten Abend. That's what I can say in German actually. So I guess you're all okay with English. Yeah? I can do it in
Scottish,
bad Danish.
only Scottish.
Yeah, or bad Danish. As Jan said, my name is Martin. I'm the senior brand ambassador for Highland Park. I've been working for Highland Park almost 10 years now, but 25 years with whiskey. And one of the reasons I took over the job at Highland Park is simply because of all the stories and, of course, most importantly, fantastic whiskey. What I'm going to talk a little bit about first is the story of Orkney and, of course, Highland Park. The story of Orkney leads to the whiskies we're going to taste at the end. And the story of Orkney is a bit different from the rest of the Scottish distilleries and from Scotland in general. As one of the first group of islands the Vikings from the Nordics came to was actually Orkney. Came up there in the year 800, settled down, took over the islands, and Orkney was actually under Danish Norwegian rules until 1472. In 1472, King Christian of Denmark decided that his daughter should be married to the king. There was a meeting taking place in Copenhagen in 1468, and all the rules for this marriage were set. They got married, and what King Christian of Denmark didn't really know about was that he had to pay a dowry. And a dowry is money to get his daughter married. The payment was 50,000 florins, the currency at that time, which was the same as 120 kilograms of pure gold. He didn't have no money at all. He had no gold at all. So he said, as a pledge, I'll give you Orkney and Shetland. But in 1472, the King of Scotland, he wanted the payment to happen. And King Christian said, fortunately, I have still no money, so I give you now Orkney and Shetland. And it became Scottish after that. There was never a letter signed, and you probably all heard about the referendum taking place in Scotland last year, the 18th of September, where they could vote for Scotland being independent. If it became a yes last year, Denmark and Norway could have bought back Orkney. We're very, very happy it became a no. Not because we don't want to be free in Scotland, but more because Norway would have bought back Orkney for $64 billion. And you would today have been drinking the best Norwegian whiskey in the world. And we don't like it. So we're actually quite happy that it was still Scottish. And hopefully will be for years to come. But after it became Scottish, of course, different things happened in Orkney. Most of the people born there will still be giving Nordic names, as on Orkney they don't consider themselves to be Scottish, they still consider themselves to be Orcadian or Nordic. And one of the guys that lived there was from a Swedish family. This man was named Magnus Hewson. And Magnus soon became very, very famous, or infamous. He worked during the daytime as a butcher. He had his own little shop in Kirkwood. He worked every night from his little house, producing whiskey. He was a smuggler and a distiller. And then every Sunday he was working for the church. And we know from old books that Magnus didn't actually really believe in God that much. He used the church because of his whiskey. So after he's producing his whiskey, he took it straight back to the church, where he hid the whiskey under the pulpit of the church, holes in the walls, and even in the old coffins. We also know that when people left the church, Magnus was standing with his little notebook, and people would just pass him on his way out, and they'll just do like this. And Magnus would write, Mr. Magnus Hewson, 3 casks, 2 casks, and so on. And he would deliver it next day. So he had a hidden agenda. But he would still be the man when you come to the cathedral. He would be the man that would help you. He would give you the chairs. He would give you the sample. He would be the man that will step out and say things like, "Thou shalt not kill," or "Thou shalt not steal." And people believed him because at the end of the ceremony, he would say, "You should not make whiskey because that's illegal and it's the devil's dram." And the people that didn't buy whiskey from him, they believed him. But the people that bought the whiskey from him, they know he was full of lies, but he made a good dram. And that led us to last year, that we wanted to make a whiskey that talked about something else than the Vikings, but talked about Magnus Hewson. And as he had this dark side, we decided to make this whiskey and call it Dark Origins. We also know when Magnus made these whiskies back then, what he would probably have been using would have been old wine casks, probably made of Spanish oak. So the influence of the whiskey we made last year, Dark Origins, would be the majority of Spanish oak wine cask. In this case here, sherry cask. So, should we taste it first? We all have, no, it's not, it's just in around. Am I the
It's
only
already around. It's already
So I'm the only one that doesn't have a whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. There it comes.
Oh, thank you. Good. First of all, has everyone here been to a whiskey tasting before? Yeah? So you all know how to drink whiskey? Yeah? You all know what to look for in a whiskey? Yeah? We all know when we go to whiskey fairs, people do this. Look at the color, because the color, we all know, is very, very important as a value anything at all. Yeah? The reason I'm saying that, when you go to the fair tomorrow, you'll see a lot of the whiskies there. People look at the color, but most of the whiskies we know will be adjusted with caramel. Okay? Highland Park is one of very few distilleries in Scotland that are not owned by French people, American people, Italian people. So Highland Park is still owned by Scottish people, and caramel costs money, so we don't use it. So what you see in a glass of Highland Park is always natural color, and we know that the darker it is, the more European oak, the thicker it is, more chance for American oak. That's kind of what we can always do. And this here is 80% first fill sherry cask. Out of the 80%, 60% will be Spanish oak, 20% will be American oak. It's bottled at 46.8% alcohol, and it's what we call a non-age statement whiskey. But the youngest whiskey we put in here, there's no secrets about this. In this batch here, the youngest whiskey is 11 years old, and the oldest is 15. So, not a really young whiskey, but not a really old whiskey. But a whiskey with full flavor, 46.8, lots of sherry influence, and definitely Highland Park. Okay, so let's try Dark Origins. While you're enjoying this, a little bit about what we do differently at Highland Park. Highland Park is one of the last distilleries in Scotland still to do the old traditional way of producing whiskey. We still do 20 to 25% of our own malts. We get from malting, commercial malting in Scotland. But that means we can still control some of the peating levels, some of the the peat we're using. And the peat, when we talk about this, is very, very different from around Scotland. If you go to Islay, we know that Islay has a different, what we call lignin content in the peat. It contains probably some wood, some seaweed and so on, which we don't have on Orkney. If you've ever been to Orkney, you will see that one thing we don't have on Orkney is trees. Trees can't survive on Orkney because of the wind. Just for the last 3 weeks, we have average speed, wind speed on Orkney with 100 miles per hour. So no trees can survive there. And that's also when you come to Orkney, you will see that people on Orkney are not higher than this. If you are higher than this, you will fly away. The new security thing on Orkney is when you come into the airport, if you're more than 175, they will hand out very, very heavy shoes. So it's a very scary place to go to. But a good fun place. So Highland Park, what we're doing here is we take our barley in where most of the other distilleries will take the malt in. We will now steep it into water for a couple of days and change the water during that period. And now, after that, we'll drain it from water, put it out on a big concrete floor for approximately 6 to 7 days. During these 6 to 7 days, we have to turn it around every 7 to 8 hours. This is to give air to the barley while it's growing, but also to prevent it from getting too warm underneath and damage the mold later on. Not that many distilleries are doing that. And the people that are doing the floor malting is very, very strong men. And when I started working for Highland Park some years back, the manager, he welcomed me. And most of you that have been to a distillery, you'll probably all agree with me that most distillery managers in Scotland are the most funny men in the world after 4 o'clock. Between 8 and 4, no humor at all. Very, very serious about what they're doing. And when I come up there, the manager welcomed me and saying, "Welcome, son." And I don't know, but the way he said it, I got scared. I knew that something was going to happen. So he said, "You have to do the floor malting for the next 7 days, and it'll be very, very hard for you, so you have to drink a lot." And I thought, my God. And I had a picture in my head of a big bottle of water. He was standing with a 12-year-old Highland Park in his hand. He said, "Drink this the next 8 hours, and you will not be sore in your arms and back tomorrow." And I believed him, of course. So I went to work, did the floor malting for the next 8 hours, and emptied a bottle of 12-year-old Highland Park. And I can assure you, not the best combination in the world. Hard work and strong alcohol. I slept very well, came back next morning, and Russell was there looking at me and said, "So how are you doing, son?" I said, no sore arms, no sore back, but my head is killing me." And he laughed a bit and said, "Son, the best cure for that, 12-year-old Highland Park, go back to work." And so we went on for 8 days. It was a pleasure to taste it in a drink, not just straight today. It was so very, very hard work to do the floor malting. After that, of course, if you leave it on the floor, it will start eating its own sugar. So we have to stop the germination. And we do that by moving it from this floor to a metal floor with lots of holes in it. Underneath we have a kiln or an oven. And here we fire up with peat. And Orkney peat mainly only contains heather. What's heather in German?
Heide.
Heide. Exactly. You speak very good German. So this will give us this, as you will see in more or less every Highland Park, this beautiful heathery honey smoke. Okay, that comes from our peat. After that, of course, we crush our malt, we add water to it, we add yeast to it, we now have a strong beer, we now distill it, and now we put it into cask. See, Highland Park is owned by Edrington Group, and Edrington Group spent last year £25 million on wood. We are the only company in Scotland that has a man working for us only to take care of our oak, mainly in Spain. When we hired him some years back, we actually never gave him a title. So he had to give himself a title, and he called himself Master of Wood. I think that's a great title to give yourself this. And Jens and I, we're actually in Spain now and again to work at the cooperage just to see how we build casks. And he invited us out for some beer, some sherry, some whiskey the first year. And at the end of the night, I actually forgot his title, and I called him Lord of the Rings. And now he hates me, so I'm probably never invited to Spain again, but still. A very, very good man that takes care of all these kind of things. And one of the things we always do is to work very well together with the Spanish government and to take care of the forest and so on. So when we cut down a tree, just to give you an idea about the length of time it takes till we can use it, we will let it air dry in north part of Spain as big blocks of trees for 6 to 12 months. Then after that, it will go to our sawmill, where we will air dry the staves after that for 6 to 12 months. After that, all the staves will be shipped to south part of Spain, where it will be air dried for another 24 to 48 months. This is just the air drying process to keep the sweetness in the oak, but to get rid of the tannin. Then it will go into our cooperage. And Jens knows of all people how hard it is to build casks, because we build a cask together. A cooper normally builds 4 to 5 casks per day. It took Jens and me quite a while to build one cask together. And what we always do at the end of this process is we fill it with some water, fresh air through it, and if water comes out, you will not get paid for the cask. No water came out of the cooper's cask. You should have seen Jens's and mine. It looked like a sprinkler. But we had no time to rebuild the cask, so we took it back to Highland Park, filled it with new make spirit, and this is now 3 years ago? 3, 4 years ago, and it was a 500 liter cask, and there's now 6 liters left. So the most expensive bottle, when it will be bottled, if there's enough for one bottle that comes out. So that's how hard it is. You're not even 2 guys get. It will now, the cask go into the sherry bodegas. What we are doing different than anyone else is that we are now paying the sherry bodegas to fill our cask with sherry, with dry Oloroso sherry. Right now in Gonzales Bias we have about 24,000 casks lying, which we own. We do not own the sherry inside, just the wood. So most of all casks that will go back to Highland Park will be European oak sherry casks. Okay? So that's the first one here. We'll now taste the next one, 18-year-old. And when we used 80% first fill in this one, we will, for the 18, use 45% first fill Oloroso sherry cask. The last 55% will be refill cask and will be predominantly European oak, but there will be some American oak sherry cask in there to give it a bit of vanilla. This whiskey here has twice won the award for the best spirit in the world by Paul Cott in America. And one of the reason for that, when we asked him why do you think this is the best, and he said, well, when you taste this, you have to give it some time in your mouth. And actually, when I started working with whiskey 25 years ago, I had a mentor, a guy called Jim McEwen. And Jim McEwen always said to me, you have to show the whiskey respect. So if it's a 12-year-old, you have to leave it in your mouth for 12 seconds. If it's an 18-year-old, leave it in your mouth for 18 seconds. 25-year-old, well, you get the point. And that was a fantastic rule until the day we released a 64-year-old. You can't do that. So today, just give it 5 to 10 seconds in your mouth and then see what happens. What should happen with the 18-year-old is this. Take a good sip, let it go around your mouth, let it go down very, very slowly, and then wait. Now your mouth will slowly dry out, okay? And then you have to wait 5, 6, maybe even 10 seconds, and then you will get what Magnus Hewson would have called the hallelujah moment. And this is where water comes back in the side of your mouth with this honey sweetness notes that just fills it, and then bit heavier smoke comes at the end with all the fruitiness from the casks. This is the 18-year-old. Sludge, skål. Not too bad. Very nice draft. So 45% first fill Oloroso sherry cask, Spanish oak, and 55% refill. So, to the series of Valhalla, the Norse gods. Why are we doing this, and what actually led to all this? Well, first of all, as I started talking about Orkney and the history of the Vikings, we decided some years back to honor the Vikings, and we did that first of all with a 12-year-old cask strength called Hjarta. Became a huge success, and kind of led the way to what we wanted to do next. We then made a series that talked about the Earls of Orkney, Earl Magnus, Saint Magnus, and Earl Håkon. And that series came out by, I would say, quite a coincidence. Some of you have heard about a man called Jerry Tosh, yeah, that works for us at Highland Park. Little wee man, looks a bit like Harry Potter. Sometimes he thinks he's Harry Potter. And actually, Jerry and I, we were doing what we call quality control one night at the warehouse on Orkney. That means we tasted some casks. And we actually became a little drunk at night. And we went to the harbour, from the distillery and down the harbour, and we were singing the whole way. And it's quite a good walk from Highland Park down to the harbour in Orkney. And when we came down there, the local policeman came. And Jerry, somehow, he's not high on this, he could be from Orkney, he's not, but could be, he found a Viking helmet, and he was wearing that all the way down to the harbour. And he was sitting on a stone on the harbour with the Viking helmet sitting like this. And the policeman came and rolled down his window, and he looked at Jerry and said, "What are you doing?" And Jerry jumped up very, very quick. Quickest I ever seen him. With the Viking helmet and said, "Don't you know who I am?" And the policeman said, "I have no idea." And he shouted, "I'm the King of Orkney." And the policeman said, "Go to bed." Rolled up his window. But that kind of next morning we thought, well, there might be a good story in this. And we actually found out that the King of Orkney never came to Orkney, because he was actually the King of Norway. He said it in Earls. And that's why we made the first series with the Earl Håkon and Earl Magnus. After that, we wanted to honor the Norse gods. And it's so easy to make a whiskey and just call it something. We wanted this whiskey to be like the god. We wanted to put the god into the glass. Welcome. So, as I was one of the guys that thought knew a lot about the Vikings and the Norse gods, I was sent to Glasgow to talk to a whiskey maker, Max McFarlane, about the Norse gods. And the first one we wanted to make was Thor. And Max McFarlane, he looked at me and said, "So who was Thor?" And I said, "Well, Thor was the man they would call if there was any problems in Valhalla. And he would come with his hammer, Hjalmar, and then he would solve the problems with his hammer." So Max looked at me and said, "So you want to make a whiskey that's so strong that it feels like a hammer hits your head and afterwards you love it?" "Yeah, I can do that, no problem." So that's what he did. He made Thor out of a mixture of American oak and European oak, quite strong, heavy, full of flavor. And then we wanted to make Loki. And Loki, as you probably all know from the story, Loki was a man you could never really trust. He was a man that fooled people. He even made Thor walk around in women's clothes for days. So he could really trick people. So we wanted this whiskey to be a bit tricky. Still Highland Park, but with quite a twist. So when you nose low-key, you would think Highland Park, but when you tasted it, it would be differently. So what we did here, we used cask that was made 16, 18 years ago with spirit, where we used peat from the mainland. Everything that came into these casks was distilled where we used peat from Caithness, and everything was malted at Baird's Malt in Inverness. That gave us a more kind of sulfury, spicy, peaty flavor than we would normally see in any honey. Now the time came to Freya, beautiful Freya, as you see there. And Freya, as I said to Max McFerlane, was the goddess of love, beauty, death, and fertility. And Max looked at me and said, the death part, I think that's about the amount you're drinking. Can't do anything about that. The love thing, well, I can definitely make a whiskey you would love, and I can definitely make you a beautiful whiskey. But he was not sure about the fertility point, because he said, if I have too much whiskey, the fertility is gone. Okay. And again, Max, for those of you that ever met a whiskey maker, you will all know that a whiskey maker is the most serious man in the world as well. But after 4 o'clock is fun. Now this was 9 o'clock in the morning. So I said to Max, for fun, Max, if I go out and I buy 2,000 Viagra, we crush it, we put it into the bottle, then we have fertility. And I thought that was a good fun story for him. But Max was doing like this. We can't do that. It's not allowed, it will never happen. And then he turned around and wanted to walk away. And I said, it was just for fun. I don't find that funny. So that would never happen. Never.
And it's bitter, by the way.
Sorry?
It's very bitter in taste, so
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Try it.
So what we did with Freya was we were, for the first time in the history of Highland Park, using 100% first fill bourbon cask. So this is 100% first fill bourbon cask for Freya, which will give it more kind of a lighter female flavor, but still with the power that Freya was known for. Now, the time came to Odin. And see, Odin was the all-father of the Norse gods. So we needed to make him more than anything else on top of the first tree. We had to make him stronger. We had to make him even better. We had to make him 100% Highland Park, where the other tree was Highland Park with what we will call a twist. So, first of all, we made Odin stronger, 55.8. We made something we never done before. We used 13 years hogshead matured Highland Park. Sherry hogshead. And first fill sherry butts. And Odin looks like this. I'll give you Odin and Jens present it. Beautiful. So 55.8%, 13 years in sherry hogshead, 3 years in first fill sherry butts. They have cooked already.